this video, we'll look at who migrates to the U.S. and factors that influence migration patterns. This chart shows the number of foreign-born individuals in the United States and also the share of the U.S. population that is foreign-born from 1900 to 2018. And what you can see is that in the early 20th century, the proportion of the U.S. population that was foreign-born was quite high, between about 13 and 15%. So between the 1920s and the 1970s, we saw this decrease in the percentage of the U.S. population that was foreign-born. And since 1970, there's been an increase in the percentage foreign-born, and more recently, this leveling off around 13.7%. Of course, because the U.S. population is growing, the number of immigrants can be increasing while the percentage of the population that is foreign-born can be remaining constant. One distinction that you frequently hear in debates about immigration is this distinction between legal immigrants and unauthorized immigrants. And if we look at the number of unauthorized immigrants in the U.S. from 1990 to 2017, we can see that there was a pretty rapid increase in the number of unauthorized immigrants between 1990 and about 2007. And since 2007, we've seen decreases in the number of unauthorized immigrants. So this chart shows for a sample of immigrant men, ages 25 to 54, and it's separated into age groups 25 to 39 and 40 to 54, shows the ratio of median earnings in 1989 to median earnings of U.S. natives. So if the ratio is greater than 1, then the earnings of immigrant men are higher than those of native men. And if the ratio is less than 1, that indicates median earnings of immigrant men that are lower than those earnings for similar U.S. natives. And if earnings are correlated with skill level, then looking at these relative earnings should give us an idea of the relative skill level of the immigrants. And so overall, the median earnings of immigrants ages 25 to 54 in 1989 were lower than those of U.S. natives. So overall, immigrants seem to be of lower skill levels than the U.S. population as a whole. And if we break this down by region of origin, we've got Asia, Central and South America, and Western Europe. We can see that the male immigrants from Western Europe appear to be roughly equally skilled compared to U.S. native men, and the immigrants from Asia and Central South America appear to be of lower skill levels. So the Roy model is a model that can help us think about what type of immigrants we might see from different locations. So let's focus first on this panel to the left, which indicates positive selection. So the two lines on this graph show the relationship between earnings as a function of skill. So the higher the slope, the higher the returns to skill. So in the panel to the left, the U.S. has higher returns to skill than this other source country. And so if you are from this source country thinking about immigrating to the U.S., you know your skill level, and you can compare, basically you're comparing how well off are you going to be if you migrate versus if you don't migrate. And if your skill level is lower than S sub P, you're going to be better off in the source country. However, if you're a high skilled worker with a skill level higher than S sub P, you're going to be able to do better in the US. So we're going to see this positive selection of immigrants, and so immigrants from this particular source country with lower returns to skill than the US would tend to be high skilled workers. If we look at the panel on the right, we actually end up with negative selection of immigrants because the returns to skill in the source country are higher than the returns to skill in the US. So the very skilled workers can actually do better by staying in the source country, so they're not going to move, whereas the lower skilled workers are going to do better by being in the US. So we're going to see migration of lower skilled workers to the US from this particular source country. So thinking about what we just saw with the immigrants from Western Europe and Asia and Central and South America, we saw lower skilled immigrants from Asia and Central South America. So that's negative selection. So perhaps the return to skill in Asia and Central and South America is higher than in the US, whereas the return to skill in the US might be higher than those countries in Western Europe. We'll work through the following example in class on Tuesday, looking at how we can use the Roy model to predict changes in immigration patterns with changes in policy. And if you have any questions about this, please feel free to post them in the Sakai forum.